I always do. All right, so we're recording now. So our objective for this is we're going to be looking at Google Classroom, like how we really organize it. So really looking and thinking about the choices that we're making in Google Classroom. So like I said, first we're going to look at our stream and settings. Then we're going to look at our topic and assignment. So really looking at the purpose of what we're assigning. So looking at especially assignments versus materials, like what do I really need to be posting as an assignment and what can really be put into that material category. And then what I think was like the big aha for me this semester was looking at the to-dos. It's called to-dos on the student side and called to reviews on the teacher side, but using those to-dos and your gradebook. So even though we're not using really our gradebook as a grade settings, we can be using it to really kind of streamline and to be double checking work, like especially since we're doing DLL for our attendance and also looking at late assignments. So as an easier way of looking at late work and managing late work. And then 4, I really believe that, like looks are, students need to feel engaged and welcome. And so customizing that banner we'll be talking about as well. And so ways, kind of just a brief look at how we can customize our banner and get away from kind of the generic Google Classroom banners, because, if everybody's using those generic Google Classroom banners, it may get a little confusing for students. So really kind of making that classroom space our own classroom space. So we're going to dive right in. Now I know it's not as pretty as presenting, but I'm going to be jumping through tabs a little bit to kind of showcase some of these things in my classrooms. So that's why I have you guys in this mode where it's in still like the editing mode here. But I have to say with this presentation, I actually prefer when I'm teaching to be in editing mode with my slides, because I don't know about you guys, but I forget to put in things all the time, or like I realize I made a mistake, and it's just an easier way to kind of fix things on the fly. So I do this when I'm teaching too, is what I've kind of learned to do, because being presentation mode, I feel like I'm constantly going out of presentation mode. All right, so looking at our streams and settings. Now, a lot of the times how I do presentations is, and my presentations and the Google Slides for my presentations, they're more like guides. I personally, when I go listen to presentations, there's so many great ideas, and then I'll go home and be like, I don't remember how to do any of that. So a lot of these, I'm just going to use the presentations as guides, or the slides as kind of a guide for me. But I've included videos for each of the things that I'm going to be talking about today, so that when we do the sandbox time, or when you look at these later, that you guys can go through and, have a little snippet of what I talked about for there. So a lot of times I will include these videos for my slides and presentations, and just kind of use my slides as kind of like all information in one, but then kind of do a deeper like showcase of it. So I want to talk about that stream and settings. So this is my class last year. So looking at when we were in class and then when we went into distance learning, and I left the stream as it like as how it's given to us. So all notifications were on it. My thought was that students will see it. They're more likely to look at the things if it's posted there, or like it's going to be more relevant. So you can see like announcements were made on here. Also, whenever I posted an assignment, it was made on here, and everything was just on this page. And what I found was that students weren't looking at this classwork. And for me, this classwork page is the bread and butter. Like this is where things are organized. This is where I want them to look at their assignments. But because everything was appearing on the stream, they didn't have to look at this classwork here. So what I did for this year is I looked at my classwork and really made my stream just for announcements. So I turned off all notifications except for any announcements like, hey, Zoom isn't working today, or like, hey, like my internet's down, like I need 5 more minutes, or whatever, like those quick announcements, or making sure they hit publish on their assignments. So I really made my stream more for announcements, and it forces them to look at this classwork a little bit better, which is really where I wanted them to be. So to look at that, we need to look at our settings here. And you guys can follow along with me. I know we have a kind of a shorter time in this deeper dive, and then we have a longer session in the sandbox. If you want to open up your classroom, that's okay. If you just want to watch me and then we can do it all in the sandbox time, that's fine too, because this is a shorter time for this deep dive. But if I look at my settings here, if if I look at my settings, I can really want to make sure that I'm paying attention. Now, most of you guys, like we should be familiar if you're, especially if you're using Meet, of like turning on and off your invitation link, or turning off and on your Meet links here. So we should be kind of familiar with our settings, but I want to pay attention to where it says the stream and where it says the classwork on stream. I really recommend turning off notifications and hiding those notifications just so it's easier. It's like, I feel like students are getting so overwhelmed with information, just turning those off. You can also show condensed notifications, but I just recommend just turn it off so students actually can pay attention to it and pay attention to the classwork somewhere else. While we're in it, we're going to come back to these settings for grade calculations, but I want you guys to just pay attention that there is this new grading thing and grade categories too, which we'll come back to later, to kind of streamline assignments. But that's the first recommendation I would do, is just making sure that our stream is working for us and that we're having all of that together. And what I do recommend too is when you guys are doing your sandbox too, the first thing we should be doing is looking at our settings and really making sure that our class is set up the correct way. So hiding those notifications, making sure everything is kind of set up how we want it to set up, is the first thing that I would do in our Google Classroom. The second thing, and so that's kind of like the very basic. And you do, yeah, Erin, you have to do that for each class individually. So that's one thing with Google Classroom. They do teach, like, they do have each class like working individually. It's not like we're Synergy where we can have things duplicate to other classes. You do have to set that up individually for each of your classes. All right. So we're going to come back to, like I said, stream or the settings in a minute, but the very first thing is just making sure that stream is turned off, making sure it's outlined. The second thing I want to take a look at is our topics and assignments. And this is really where I really focused in on, and really kind of like this semester, I really wanted to make sure that my students understood what it was. So for topics and assignments, I'm going to talk about it first, and then I'll showcase some different ways that I've done it. But for your topics, you want to make sure you want to keep it simple. So for your topics, figure out how you're going to organize it. Do you want to organize it by week, subject, file type, or unit? I've done week and I've done unit. Honestly, week is what works best for me, especially in distance learning time. Then think about how we're using emojis, abbreviations, or numbers to organize within that topic. And then using different options for postings. So like I said, really taking a look at materials and our assignments. So some examples of this, for how, if I think about the pre-COVID times, I would like think about that as the pre-time. I was organizing all of my classes by units. And so you can see when we went into distance learning, I had a distance learning unit. And then I had a unit 3 unit where everything was posted under here. And this was okay. Like, I actually thought this was a really great way of organizing. I also had just a resources tab, like where you just like there are sentence frames and things like that. What I found though is that students were kind of confused by this. And I don't know if it's because I had the stream turned on and so they weren't looking at classwork at all. But what I found is that students were constantly asking me questions about it. And I would be like, it's on Google Classroom. And they're like, but I can't find it. I find this with teachers as well. We have a LSL, like a Trojan Google Classroom too. And sometimes, like, I think organizing the topics can be a little bit confusing there. But I do think this is a great way to organize if you're consistent with it. What I jumped to for distance learning, fully distance learning, was doing it by weeks. So all of my classes are done by week now. And I felt like this was the best way to organize for distance learning, and students weren't asking me as many questions about it. And that's the ultimate goal, right? Is not to ask as many questions, or to like for them to figure it out on their own. I want them to ask questions, but and what I also implemented this year was really looking at using emojis and organizing by the day. So let me show you a better example of my week. So for each week, I had, I used consistent emojis. So every Monday, every day I posted slides for that day. So that was our daily's agenda. And then I posted, had these emojis that worked with it. So every Monday, it was the black and white book. Every Tuesday, it was the red icon. or the red book. Every Thursday was the blue books. So it really kept this organized and kind of kept me accountable too for it. Any assignments that belonged with that day also got that same icon. So students can easily visually see which icon was there. Now, you don't have to use emojis. I've seen some people use like the square emojis or like different emojis. You could just put in symbols, like if you want to put in a symbol, or just put in abbreviations like for Monday or whatnot. But I do recommend like having some sort of organized system like this that's consistent. So we want our students to be able to know what they're doing at a glance and for them to be able to see it. So having like some sort of emoji or some sort of a symbol there can definitely kind of make it more organized and consistent with that. Now, I'm going to talk about this when we get to the to-do list and when we talk about like the grade book. I would make, if you're doing daily slides, I would make these as material. Lesson learned from distance learning. And then, so for the distance learn, or for I would make these materials versus assignments, because anything in assignments is going to show up on your to-do or in your grade book, which is a mess if you have multiple assignments that are assigned that way. And I see in the chat about assignments recommendations that are used for multiple days. Yes, so there's a couple ways to do that. I have our daily journal that we do. So our bell ringers, and now the next semester, I'm also going to include our exit tickets on there, is something that we work on every day. So I signed it on Monday, they turn it on Friday. And so for that, I always just include it at the top of the week. So I always kind of shift around so it's organized every time I post and assign something. But I always put this at the top. So if it's something that we use consistently every single day, I just don't assign a color to it, and that's just put at the top every single time. So so I just kind of drag it to where I need it to be every day. If it's something, let's see if I can find where I did it. Other things that I've done, if it's something that's going to take 2 days, I've just put the 2 days that it's going to take. So I can't think off the top of my head which week I did this, but there was one project that we were doing where we worked, here it is, where we worked on it like Monday or Wednesday and Thursday. So what I just did is I added both of those colors for those days to show that this was a 2-day project that we worked on. So you can put as many emojis as you want with it. One word of caution though, with Synergy, if you are using, if you're doing automatic grades where it's shifting over and syncing with Synergy, these emojis are going to show up as like weird symbols at the beginning of the assignment. Synergy used to allow us to delete those weird symbols so it looked consistent, but that's just another choice. Like if you're using these emojis, just note that the end you're using syncing with Synergy, it's going to appear as like weird symbols. I used it for my winter intercession class, and I just kind of didn't care that it had weird symbols, but just word of caution if you're using it with that. The other way to organize that I've seen other teachers do too, and then I did it for winter intercession because we were doing weekly classes, was to organize it by dates. So for every day, they got a new post, and then everything was, again, color coded for me that I did here. But I had our daily agenda slides just as materials. And then for winter intercession, we had chunks of time that we were doing. And so for those chunks of time, I would release it like prior, like during that time. So from 8:30 to 10, I just released their first assignment, and then from 10 to 11, I released their second assignment. So the color coding means like different times of that day. That was with that. Um, and so that you can have it there. Now, there is a word of caution if you're using daily in your normal classes, is that I think Google Classroom has a limit of 100 topics. So like it should work for our next semester, but just know, I can't remember how many days our next semester is, but if you go over 100 topics, then it won't allow you to post anymore. So I know other teachers are running into that problem that have been doing it daily. And then Lisa, the syncing with Synergy is not my favorite thing, as it continues not to be my favorite thing. It's been off and on syncing with Synergy. So I was practicing it with it for my winter intercession class, just to see what it worked in the troubleshooting. And there was days I just turned it off completely because it's still pretty glitchy, but I know some teachers are making it work. So syncing does work sort of with Synergy with a grain of salt, as we always, as we have our problems with there. All right, so that's just some ways to organize. And so again, I really want to think about the ways that we're organizing and making it clear for students. And really what I like with this, and what I really, and I'm going to keep going for next semester, is this color coding and with like the dates and everything with that. Um, it will it is just that the students, like for me personally, I can kind of see what we did for each one of those days. And then for students, it was consistent. It was what they knew, it was what they kind of expected. So they could easily glance and see what they were doing for each day. And then Kathy's question about, can you delete some posts from last year? And yes, that's I've seen on some of the forums that exactly what teachers are doing, that they're actually creating a new topic that's, or like they're deleting one of their topics and like creating a new one that says like old work or first semester work. We don't have to worry about that so much, as because we're, shifting into new classes. But that's what I've seen what other teachers are doing, is they're just making one topic of like kind of a dump topic of like, this is old past work, and or they're deleting with that. And it's only for the topics. So the 100 posts limit is for topics. So topics are these, like where it says like week 10. So there's, if you're doing like daily topics, that's the only reason that you would run into that limit. I don't see why. I don't know whether there are 100 topics. If you have 100 topics and you're not doing daily, I don't know what you're doing that would cause that, but that's the only thing that would be there. All right, good questions. Keep them coming. I know I feel a little like out of my rhythm of Google, of doing synchronous or asynchronous, or no, synchronous learning. As you can tell, I'm still in winter break mode a little bit too, but getting used to the Zoom platform again. All right. Um, and then the other thing I want to kind of talk about is our schedule and reuse assignments. And I think this is something that we are mostly aware of, but it's often the thing that I forget to do as well. But in Google Classroom, we can actually schedule and reuse assignments. Now, scheduling is not my favorite. The beginning of the semester, I was like really consistent about scheduling and like having everything ready for me the next morning. So like by the time I like shut my computer the night before, everything was scheduled out. It was going to schedule and appear for students at 8 o'clock each morning. But scheduling doesn't work with multiple classes, but I still really like it as an option. Oh, sorry. Thank you, Peter. I can show you how to create a topic. So there's a couple of ways that you guys can, that we can create topics. So if we go to our create button, so this create button is kind of our magic button for Google Classroom. If we go to create, we can click on create topic. And here we can create whatever topic we'd like. So if you're setting it up by week, if you're setting up by date, however you're setting up your topic. And so when I click create, I'll just add in the topic and then it will appear. So I'll put test topic. And there it will appear at the top. I can also drag these, and so I can drag these to wherever I want. So if I don't want this to appear on test topic, I can drag them below. It is a little like clunky to use, but you can drag them to wherever you want. So if you're doing it by unit, oftentimes I would like re-drag my topics to appear the way that I wanted them to in Google Classroom. The other way that you can create a topic is when you create an assignment. So if you click create and then click an assignment, and in my normal assignment loading screen here, I can go to topic. And so right now it says no topic. I can pick any of the topics that I've already created, or I can go to create a topic. So I can automatically just create my topic here. I'm just going to call it topic. And the Cami choice, I'll actually go over tomorrow how my session tomorrow is about Cami, but the Cami, how you get the Cami assignment in Google Classroom is through the Cami extension. So if you go to like the Chrome store and look up Cami extension, once you have that extension in place, then it shows up automatically in Google Classroom. So it's pretty awesome to use. All right, and then I can have my tests or I have my topics here, and I don't think I saved it, so it wasn't appear. The other thing that I use a lot, so that's how you create your topic. So you can either do it by creating your own topic on Create or by going to your assignment.
Or may I ask a question here?
Yeah.
Towards the end of the semester, our PLC was we'd each post assignments on our own. We had a PLC Google Classroom, basically.
Mhm.
And then towards the end of the semester, we were dragging assignments from the very top all the way down to the bottom. And it was pretty difficult to do it because at that point we had so many assignments.
Mhm.
So is there another, if you create the assignment and you fill in the topic, does that assignment automatically appear in the topic and then you can just move it in place within the topic?
Yeah. So when I place it, so when I let me go to create that assignment. So like say I create it under the test topic. It will appear under that test topic. Now I don't have multiple assignments, but I'll show you in the other one. So it will appear under that test topic. And then once I have assignments in place, like more than one, I can drag that assignment to wherever I need it to live. So a lot of times I do that so that it's, like stays consistent to how I want my students to see it. But you can, once it's in that topic, you can drag it to wherever you want to. And that's another reason why like weekly topics were really worked well for me because I only had to deal with this many assignments versus when I did units, I was dealing with however many assignments I had in that unit.
Another question related to that is at a certain point, based off of what you just said, there's so many assignments that you have to hit view more, right? So at a certain point under a topic,
Mhm.
if you have, let's say, 20 assignments, it might show you 10 and then it will say view more. Is there a
Yes.
way to, yep, is there a way to get rid of that feature? Because I think some students don't actually check the view more.
Yeah, I not that I know of off the top of my head, and that's why I would recommend for like especially for students having smaller chunks for topics like for the weekly when I was doing this weekly, as you can see like I didn't run into that problem. It didn't have enough assignments where it forced it to go to view more. I don't think you can get rid of it though because I think it's kind of Google's way of condensing everything down. Um, so I would really recommend for students purposes, really condensing what topics you're doing. Some teachers I've seen have like if they're doing like unit 3, they might put like 1B or like make sub units as their topics just to make it clearer and kind of let more condensed version of it because exactly right. Like students, I feel that's what I was running into, like with having them not go to classwork is students will just look what's there and they'll like not click on anything else. So the smaller chunks that you can make for students, I think the better. All right. Good questions. Good questions. All right. So I'm gonna talk right now, since we're like talking about like creating those assignments. You can schedule those assignments out. Now, like was saying, scheduling assignments is not my favorite thing with like 6 classes or 3 classes that we're doing, because you do have to do it for individual classes. That is one feature of Google Classroom that I wish they would change, and will consistently write them about changing. But when you assign an assignment, so let me do a test. My students are going to be super confused on winter break, but that's okay. Now, if I don't schedule it, I can assign this to multiple classes. But if I do want to schedule it, I can schedule this out. So, like I said, like every day before I close my computer at the beginning of the semester, I was scheduling these out so that I didn't have to worry about it the next day. Um, this did prove beneficial. We know that Google had some glitches where things weren't working right away, and this was one way that I could access my stuff, even if other things were shut down. Um, that's like not a problem 95% of the time, so you don't have to worry about it so much. But this can be really useful. When I was doing winter intercession classes, I would schedule all of their assignments out for the day so that at 10 they were independently working at 10 o'clock. At 9:45 the new assignment for them for that independent work time would show. So you can schedule these out by going to schedule. Oh, and yes, it doesn't necessarily appear at the same time. It appears like 2 minutes after. It takes a couple minutes for it to like once it appears. I would say like one thing that I've just said, if I want it to be at a split, like I want it to be shown by 9:45 or have students access for it, then I would just make the schedule time like 9:43. And that usually by 9, the time I wanted them to show it, then it would appear. But that is one little like mini glitch too that Google Classroom has, is that I think the script starts running at whatever time you want it to show versus like actually appearing at that. Um, so just kind of FYI there. The other thing is you want to make sure that all of your other things are filled in before you schedule, because when you schedule it, it will kind of like do a draft post. So you won't have access to this page anymore. So like when I click schedule, then it brings me back to my main Google Classroom page. With scheduling, I can edit this at any time too. So at any time I need to edit this, like I forgot to, I forgot something or I want to add in more instructions, I can edit it as well and then just hit reschedule for that. All right, and I'm going to kind of quickly go through the next features because these ones you probably have heard of before, and I want to kind of make sure we have enough time for the next ones. The next thing here is to reuse the post. Again, this is something that I think I've talked to a lot of teachers last semester that just kind of forgot that this was an option. So if I assign it to one class, or especially now that we're going into, teaching kind of the same class, but next, the second semester we're teaching the same classes next semester, you can reuse these posts. So when I click on reuse post, and it's being slow, I can select the class that I want to use it for. So right now I'm in period 1. So let's say I want to have stuff for my winter intercession class that I want to look at. So I can go through. Now it is a little chunky. So when we're doing it for this, the semester, you're going to have to scroll a little bit for like the August stuff. But anything that I want to reuse, I can click on reuse, and now I have it for my class. So I don't have to recreate the whole post, as long as you don't mind scrolling if you're using stuff from August. But now I can edit and reassign those assignments again in Google Classroom. So that is a feature that I use a lot when I'm looking at multiple classes, or especially if I'm scheduling out assignments for multiple classes. I don't have the option of assigning it all at once, so I'll use the reuse post so that I can schedule those out.
Can you go back and show just how you got the reuse sections real quick?
Yeah. So in our magic create button here, if you go to create and go to reuse post.
Oh, gotcha.
And then up at the top here, this arrow, you can click back to your classes and pick any class that you would like. So I think this is especially valuable going into this next semester. And from archived classes, yeah, I have my archived classes here. So like this next semester, I'm going to this week, I'm going to archive my classes, my period 1 and 3 classes. And so I can just pull my archive classes and reuse all of those assignments. So that is really valuable for us.
Amber, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So last semester for each class I taught, I would go through the process of assigning an assignment. And you're saying that I can do it once and then assign it to all 3 classes?
Yeah. So as long as you don't care about scheduling, then if you don't mind that it's not scheduled out, but if I create the assignment here, and so if I say test assignment, when I go to my 4 page or this 4 thing, I can select how many classes, whatever classes that I want to assign it to. So if I want to assign this winter session in period 3, whatever classes, and then I can have the same due date. I can even, if it's the same class, you probably have the same topics. So you can still pick from the same topics with there and have it kind of nice and organized that way. And then you click assign and it shows up to everybody. The only thing is, and like I'll show you right here, since I have 3 classes that are selected, when I go to schedule, I no longer have the scheduling feature. So as long as you don't care about the scheduling, then you can assign it multiple times at once. So save you guys some time. All right. So then, so let's schedule and reuse assignments with that. With that, I also want us to pay attention to how we're assigning this. And this is going to be really valuable looking at our tier review and our grade book. So in Google Classroom, we have multiple ways that we can assign things. So assignment is probably like what we use 99% of the time here. Kami assignment is if you have the Kami extension, then this will appear, and then it works similarly to how you would assign for a Google Classroom assignment. It looks slightly different, but the same with there. And so this is my Kami assignment page. So pretty much the same materials, but with Habit. I'll talk about that tomorrow. So if you guys want more in depth about Kami assignments and extensions, make sure you show up tomorrow because I'm going to talk in depth about Kami tomorrow. And then the question and the material. And this is what one key tidbit that I really took away from distance learning is that I don't need to make everything an assignment. My daily slides, I'm going to make a material. And because my students aren't really doing anything with those except for like it's more of a resource guide for them for those daily slides. And so they don't need to turn it in. They don't need to have a due date for it. My initial thought was like having those daily slides as an assignment because then the parents can see it and then I can have it. But what I found is that when I look at my grade book and my to review, then I see all of that and it's just a mess. So we don't want to do that. So yes, and students can still access links on a material. So they'll have the same kind of rights, like the viewing rights, they'll still be able to access links. And so for my daily slides, they're definitely just going to go to a material. So an example of this is I used it for my winter intersession class is my daily slides. My agenda was here. And then I have different, like then my actual what they need to do and turn in were the assignments page. And the material option is not the same as an announcement. With an announcement, the announcements will show up on the stream only. So like this was my announcement page for my stream page for this. So when I announce something to my class, it only shows up on the stream. With materials, these are more of like your resources. So like I had my class syllabus as a resource. Let me go, I'll show you from like my winter intercession class. So like my material for my daily agenda slides it will show up like in classwork, the same place the assignments will. The only difference is like there's not going to be a due date and there's not going to be doing like that. And that's it. So if you want something, and Marilyn's right, if you want something on their to-do list, so I think any action item for the student, anything that a student needs to take action on, make sure that you do it as an assignment. If it's just more of a resource or just like a thing that you're using in the classroom, like my daily slides, this was just more of like what they were seeing, but they didn't necessarily need to take action on it. It wasn't the things that they were like physically or digitally interacting with. So that's kind of how the difference that I would see it. So anything that you want them to take action on, make sure that's an assignment. Anything that's just more of a resource or more of a guide, then just list it as a material. And the reason why, and what I've learned this last semester, is that when you, I really like using my gradebook and my to review. So one of the tabs here is our gradebook. And I think, we have synergy, so we aren't using Google Classroom as our gradebook, but I kind of ignore the grades that are posted on Google Classroom because it doesn't have the same categories I have in Synergy or whatnot. But what I use this for was to check distance, any DLL work that was turned in or any late work. So even pre-COVID, I accepted late work and I was having to have them fill out Google form if they submitted late work. And it was like it was a link nightmare. So what I've started doing is just looking at the grades here. And this is why I would really recommend really being purposeful of what is an assignment and what is a material, because whatever you sign as assignment is going to appear in this gradebook and your to review page. Now, how I look at this gradebook here is this is a really great way for at a glance to see what students have turned in, especially late. So I can see that on this assignment here, these are stuff that I've already graded, stuff that are missing. I can see, I can kind of at a glance kind of see what is there and what is not. What makes this a mess is because all my daily slides were also assigned as assignments. So I'm seeing all of my daily slides plus these assignments. And so I see all of this. So next semester, that's why I really want to be purposeful about what is assigned as assignment and what is assigned as material. It's because then I can really use this at a glance to see what has been turned in. So I can see like this this was a resource that they could use. I haven't graded this yet, so this is something that I need to grade. Let me show you. Let me see if I can find something that somebody's turned in late. And then at a glance here, I can see like they must have turned it in after grades were due because I checked all of this beforehand. But I can see like on their e-portfolios, I graded their e-portfolios, but I have Roberto who turned this in late. He doesn't have a grade for this yet. So what I can do is I can go to click here and I can click on view submission and it brings me to his submission in Google Classroom. So now I can just grade it all in one place. I can have it here. I can grade it. This one was weird because it gave links. He didn't turn in the link, so he just turned it in. But I can give a grade here and then return it back to him. So this is using our gradebook is a really great way to look at missing work, to look at DLL work that's been turned in, just kind of at a glance to see that work. Because I know the biggest struggle for me was that late work was just a big fat mess. And so I use my gradebook as a way to look at late work or DLL work to turn in at a glance to be able to see that. Now, like I said, it was a little messy for me because all of my daily slides were as assignments and kind of look at that. And I believe students can see a breakdown of their grades. I haven't looked at the student view in a while. Let me pull up a class that I'm a part of. Let's see our SVT. We don't have grades. I think students at Patty, I'll have to get back on that question because I can't remember. I think this one has. Maybe they can. I thought they could see a similar breakdown, but maybe it's just for us. So it looks like you can't see it because I know this had some assigned ones. So students can't see a similar breakdown to your grades with that. And then Justin, your question about, do I sync to Google Classroom? Honestly, no. For my normal classes, I don't sync to Google Classroom. Part of that is I'm working towards standards-based grading and it doesn't work so well. Syncing to Google Classroom only works for raw scores, and so it doesn't quite work for standards-based grading. I do it for my winter intersession classes because I want to be familiar with it. So only for winter session.
Amber, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So the way I had my Google Classroom set up last semester, basically when students turned in an assignment late, then I received an email, and that's so I'd grade everybody's assignments, and then if I received an email, then I would know that I would have to go back and grade that student's assignment. And what you're suggesting regarding having Google Classroom gradebook, then you'd be keeping two gradebooks, which kind of seems to, I mean, I can kind of see how visually, if there were a few times that I made a mistake, but it seems like it's sort of duplicating the work because most of what you have here, you're going to have to transfer to Synergy anyway.
Yeah. So I use the gradebook more to see what has been graded and what hasn't been graded. And there's actually an easier, I'm going to show you the to review, which is now actually like easier visually than what the gradebook looks like. I still like assigned because I want students to see their grades. Students don't always go to Synergy. I make them go to Synergy, but they don't usually do that on the regular, but I know they're looking at Google Classroom. So I always grade stuff in Google Classroom anyways. So yes, you are kind of duplicating, but for me, it's this, like I grade everything in Google Classroom and then transfer it over anyways, and put it in anyways. So this is just, it's more of like, I use my gradebook just to see what has been turned in late, essentially, is the only reason I use it. And then, so on that note, the easier way to look at this, so I was using gradebook pretty consistently throughout this last semester. It was a mess, but I worked through that mess. The second thing I want to show you guys is if you go to this hamburger button here and go to the to review. Now, I have to admit, I told my students all the time, as a student, they have a to-do list here. And I know a lot of you guys are familiar with this to-do list by the chat. But what I told my students, like every day after, like during advisory, I told them to check their to-do list. Every day I was like, at the end of class, check your to-do list to see what you have due today. But I was ignoring it for myself. And so at the end of the semester, I really started looking at this to review. And what this does is kind of the same thing that I was using the gradebook for. Mine's a mess right now because I have all my classes. I wasn't using this, but I can see for my classes like what I have left to grade. So I can see like their community project final document. 2 people have turned it in, 1 person hasn't turned it in, and 6 I've graded 6 of them. And I can use this. And yeah, Marilyn, I see how you have to review. Like it's the best thing. It really is the best thing. So I can pull this up for all classes, or if I'm just grading like period 1, I can just go to period 1 and look at the assignments for period 1 specifically. One thing that I recommend though is, so once you've graded it and looked at it, go back to all classes, I will go and make this my checklist. This is like crossing off something from your list. I will go as marked as review, and then it disappears for me, at least on this page. So now it's gone. I can see that I have it. And so this is something I'm really going to utilize next semester. Now, I also am really concerned about the DLL students and like the students who are turning in late work. So at any time, and I can go to reviewed and get that same, now I'm over in the review tab, and I can get that same information. So if a student turned it in late, so for this community fraud project in, it doesn't return it as new. It will keep it as the reviewed. So it's the reviewed. When you click on marked as reviewed, it's kind of like you checking off that checklist. But at any time, I can go to reviewed and I can kind of at a glance to see if I had any turned in assignments here. So like I had 3 assignments that are turned in, 2 assignments that are turned in. Again, I would be really mindful of what you're doing as assignments versus materials, because you also get all those daily slides that I didn't check to see if they turned them in or not. So really, really pay attention to that. This is a lifesaver. Like this is the best function in Google Classroom and distance learning with when we're looking at, for us, looking at like those DLL work, looking at those late assignments. All right, so I know we're over time, so I'm just going to talk about one more little thing, and then we're going to take a 15-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll have playtime. So if you guys are confused about any of this stuff, we'll have some time to explain and to go through. But the other thing I want you guys to think about is customizing your banner. So I try to avoid the generic Google Classroom banners. Personally, I don't know, I like doing my own thing, which is a good thing and a bad thing at times. But I like to try to create my own banners with Google Classroom in here. And the part of the reason why is just that it makes it a little bit more personable to the class. And then also, if everybody's using those generic Google Classroom banners, it's really easy for the students to kind of get mixed up with their classes, or, it's just visually, it's just a better way of kind of looking at it. So I always kind of personalize those banners. So there's a couple of how-to videos on how to customize those banners using Google Classrooms, or those Bitmoji classrooms if you're using Bitmoji classrooms, and the sizes for those classrooms are listed here as well. The other thing I want to show you guys is, as much as we organize our own Google Classrooms, I recommend that students organize Google Classrooms as well. So this was a lesson. If you're at my site, you've already seen this lesson probably multiple times, but this is a lesson for students of how they can keep organized in a digital world. So it talks beyond Google Classroom, but really showcasing how to use calendar and how to use a to-do list. So I really recommend going over with students on how to use these skills and to be organized themselves in this digital world that we're living in. All right, so I'll leave it open for a minute of any questions or ideas or suggestions that we might have.